When I first told my family I want to be a psychiatrist, let alone a child and adolescent psychiatrist, one of the first questions they asked me was, "Do you really think you can handle it?" I can understand why they would ask. I mean, the fact was that day in and day out, I would hear stories of trauma, abuse, hardships, you name it. As an author, I understand the power of storytelling and the way that it affects us. The stories that we listen to or read have the power to shape our perspective of the world. When we share stories, empathy is what helps us build those strong connections with one another. Here's my own family story. My papa was the kind of grandfather who made me laugh more times than I can count. Oh, he had the best smile, the best hair, and the absolute best grilling skills. Ugh, the savory aroma of spices and barbecue filled the air, making your mouth water. His dedication to his family, the Lord, and helping others in need spoke volumes. One evening during my sophomore year of college, my phone rang. It was my mom. She called to let me know that my grandfather, my papa, who I loved so dearly, was in the hospital. He had experienced a stroke and was declining rapidly. The pain and sadness in her voice made my heart sink. At the hospital, she tried as best as she could to ask questions, to try to understand what was going on. She didn't get many answers. In fact, some of the caregivers weren't even making eye contact with her, especially when sharing bad news. They were doing their jobs. And in doing their jobs, they were pushing away and sidestepping the pain she was experiencing. What disturbed her the most was that she felt as if this was just another case, another day for the team providing care. For her, it wasn't just another day. As a recent medical school graduate, I understand now more than ever how hard it is to be in that position as a healthcare professional to deliver bad news to a family. An ounce of empathy at that moment could have made a difference. That experience was the initial spark that led me to search for my purpose in life, and becoming a doctor eventually became a part of it. As I begin to transition into my new role as a physician, I want to embrace empathy, to step into people's shoes, try to understand their experiences, perspectives, and how they see the world. Being empathetic as a doctor begins with seeing people as people, being a part of someone's journey, not just their illness. I realize we have to have courage to be able to listen to and put others before ourselves in order to have great relationships at work and in our communities. Yet, according to research published by the American Psychological Association, people tend to avoid empathy because they think it requires too much mental effort. Lead researcher Dr. C. Darrell Cameron suggests that it's possible to increase empathy by encouraging people that they can do it well. Empathy requires us to be aware that the other human right in front of us is having a human experience we may or may not be familiar with. If we don't embrace it, relationships deteriorate, communities separate, anger, anxiety, and depression rise. Ultimately, human connection is lost. One time at a local free clinic during my third year of medical school, a patient nervously shared a story of his struggles with managing his diabetes. It wasn't because he wasn't trying, he said, but it was due to his lack of understanding of what and what not to eat. I felt that frustration and confusion as I had been on my own journey of fighting obesity at that time. I also understood the fear of being judged by others when sharing my own struggles. This led me to handing him a few booklets on healthy eating and teaching him how to read a food label. I'll never forget the smile on his face as he thanked me for taking the time to listen and help him. I've also been working part-time at a local youth emergency shelter called Park Place Outreach. We work to provide residential and non-residential services to homeless, runaway, and at-risk youth ages 11 to 21. With the youth, we have cooking classes, life skills, group activities, and you can't forget about playing that Uno. I mean, they get pretty feisty about their Uno. I love the opportunities to build relationships with the kids. Empathy is not just a skill, it's an absolute necessity. It's in how we listen to, talk to, and care for the youth that really makes an impact. When I tell you that sometimes listening to or reading their stories is hard, it is. Over time, I had to learn that in order to keep giving, I had to refuel. Besides, you can't pour from an empty cup. Everyone has a story, whether we get a chance to hear it or not. We have ample opportunities to empathize with others daily. As many opportunities as we have, we can practice demonstrating it while also protecting our own mental wellness. Through my experiences, I found ways to embrace empathy, and you can do these things too. Exercise curiosity. Be curious. We can have a powerful impact on a person by showing our genuine interest in them and sincerely recognizing their importance. By asking questions, we begin to understand them. Make an effort to be present. When we're present, we're listening attentively, observing others for their body language, and engaging in conversation. We make eye contact and put away our phones while we're talking. Something to keep in mind. When it comes to making eye contact and certain gestures, just remember the context and who you're talking to. For a person with autism or an autistic person, their way of being present may be different and may not include eye contact. That's certainly okay. Be aware of bias and privilege. Bias puts certain groups of people at a disadvantage, while privilege puts others at an advantage, even without knowing it. An example of bias is believing that Black patients are more tolerant of pain, leading to less pain treatment. An example of privilege is when someone is raised with enough money has never had to think about whether they could afford to buy healthy food. Self-awareness is key here. We can educate ourselves on our own biases and privileges, explore new experience, and challenge our biases, removing any that can lead to insensitive judgment. Remember our role. We are not responsible for fixing others. Feeling sorry or pity for someone is sympathy. Our role is to be encouraging and supportive. Offer stories and advice, but never force it. We won't be able to help everyone. Maybe the best we could do for them at that moment is to offer a listening ear. Acknowledge their pain and ours. Empathy is this two-way street. This is their time to open up, but so can we. Boss to employee, employee to boss. Physician to patient, patient to physician. Parent to child, child to parent. We all hold important roles in each other's lives. Acknowledging each other's pain and connecting through each other's experiences can really make a difference. Grant each other grace. Care but do not carry. Care for others, but don't carry their burdens. Establishing healthy boundaries is actually loving and incredibly important. It allows us to protect ourselves and the other person in order to establish a connection and evaluate our emotions. Feeling emotional after learning of someone's circumstances is okay. We can check in with ourselves to see how we feel. If we feel overwhelmed, we can take a deep breath, practice mindfulness, pray, go for a walk in the park or whatever, relieve stress. It's hard to care for others if we do not care for ourselves first. How can we embrace empathy while also protecting our own mental wellness? Exercise curiosity. Make an effort to be present. Be aware of bias and privilege. Remember our role. Acknowledge their pain and ours. Care, but do not carry. And evaluate our emotions. Embrace empathy. Maya Angelou said it best. I've learned that people will forget what you said. People will forget what you did, but people will never forget how you made them feel. Empathy is what helps us build, sustain, and feel those human connections. It takes patience, intention, and effort. I am hopeful that if we each reach down and have the courage to embrace it, we can each play our part in creating a better, more compassionate world. Thank you.